Hello and welcome to this month's training. Our topic this month is the planning section, and today we're going to be talking about the resource unit leader. The planning section contains 4 units. We have the planning section chief who oversees the 4 units. The units are as follows: the resource unit leader, the situation unit leader, the demobilization unit leader, and the documentation unit leader. There may also be technical specialists, such as an intelligence unit. The resource unit ensures that all assigned personnel and other resources have checked in at the incident site. Physical resources consist of personnel, crews and teams, and equipment available for assignment to or employment during incidents. The resource unit staff maintain the status of all resources allocated to the incident. The status should reflect whether these resources are assigned, checked in and supporting the incident, available, checked in and ready for a specific work detail or function, or out of service, allocated to an incident but unable to function for mechanical, rest, or personal reasons, or because their condition makes them unusable. The resource unit leader is responsible for maintaining the status of all assigned resources at an incident. This is achieved by overseeing the check-in of all resources and maintaining a status-keeping system that indicates the current location and status of all resources. For example, key supervisory personnel, primary, and support resources. Different IMTs use different methods for collecting and organizing check-in lists. Many teams use electronic systems now. It is up to the resource unit leader or status check-in recorder to determine the best method for their team. Depending on the size and complexity of the incident, the resource unit leader will have a status check-in recorder to perform this function, or the resource unit leader will be responsible for performing it. Remember that if the resource unit leader wants their staff to perform a job, they have to establish procedures and communicate them clearly, as well as inform personnel as to what is expected of them. Such procedures should include a check-in location, a timeline for submitting check-in forms, a method for submitting check-in forms, and inspection requirements. It is also the responsibility of the resource unit leader to maintain ICS Form 219. That's the resource status cards, which are commonly referred to as T cards. The resource unit leader needs to update the resource status as necessary by adding or removing cards as appropriate. To track the availability and status of all resources, including kind, type, and numbers, constraints and capabilities, rest and work status. The T cards should be kept in a place where they can be seen by personnel but does not interfere with the resource unit leader's workspace. Also, the resource unit leader is the only person who should handle the T cards. The resource unit leader participates in the planning process by providing critical information in incident briefings, tactics meeting, planning meeting, and the operational briefings. The resource unit leader produces the following components of the incident action plan: ICS Form 203, which is the organization assignment list, and appropriate parts of the ICS Form 204, which are the assignment lists. Other forms that the resource unit leader is a critical part of is the ICS Form 207, which is the incident organizational chart. This is used to indicate what ICS organizational elements are currently activated and the names of the personnel who are staffing each element. The personnel who are responsible for managing the organizational positions are listed in each box as appropriate. This is prepared by the resource unit leader and posted along with the other displays at the incident command post. A chart is completed for each operational period and updated when organizational changes occur. Another form is the Form 214, which is the activity log. This form is used to record the details of unit activities, including strike team activities. The file of these logs provides a basic reference from which to extract information for inclusion in any after-action reports. It is also initiated and maintained by command staff members, division and group supervisors, air operations group, strike team and task force leaders, and unit leaders. Its completed logs are forwarded to the supervisors who provide copies to the documentation unit. These are distributed by the documentation unit who maintains a file of all activities logs. One copy of each log must be submitted to the documentation unit. Each of us should assemble a kit that will enable us to be self-sufficient for the first 48 hours during an incident. The Resource Unit Leader Position Task Book lists critical items. Such things should also be considered: incident-specific management procedures, necessary ICS forms, T-cards, general supplies, for example, a staple gun, markers, tape, reference materials, such as ICS position codes, unit identifier lists, and a U.S. atlas, resource locators, which would be the T-card rack, demobilization plan example or template, additional forms, such as release forms, support manual for incident automation software if applicable. Some items that would be nice to have include a laptop computer, laminated location signs, for example, check-in and demobilization. It's always important to know the details of your assignment so that you're better prepared and ready to act upon arrival. It may not be easy to get information, and the dispatch information you receive might be limited. There are some ways that you can get current information outside the normal channels, but keep in mind that there are limitations. Watch the news. Keep in mind that there may be bias or potentially unclear information, but at least you'll get some idea about what's going on. If you know someone in the affected jurisdiction, you could call him or her. The person could be busy or might pass along wrong information. The more you think out of the box in this area, the better off you'll be. It's important for us to understand the difference between transitioning from an initial response or transitioning from an existing IMT. An initial response would be we were the first IMT on scene and have to work from the ground up. If we are transitioning from a current IMT, there may be many of the tools in place that we need to be successful. Initial response should establish a check-in immediately. We need to identify and establish contacts and procedures that are relevant to the resource unit leader. If we're transitioning to the incident after the initial response, some helpful resources of the incident information include local counterparts, a national perspective, and previous responders. It's important for us to determine the specific incident setup needs for other federal agencies. Initial briefings can come in many forms. Sometimes the resource unit leader arrives after the formal initial briefing. The incident commander might brief the agency administrator one-to-one. The resource unit leader might not participate. There will probably be gaps in the information regarding the incident's resources depending on the complexity or status of the incident. If you are not briefed by the incident commander or agency administrator, get a briefing from the planning section chief. This could be a formal sit-down meeting or an informal conversation whenever you can get his or her attention. Again, you need to be proactive and sometimes creative in order to get the information that you need. Information that the resource unit leader should obtain includes incident size and potential, procedures for ordering resources and supplies, resources at the scene, operational work periods, where the incident command post is, location of other incident facilities, any safety concerns and hazards, staffing information for the resources and demobilization, the ICS Form 201, incident briefing, the ICS Form 209, incident status summary, and the incident action plan. You need to understand the timelines and priorities. You need to know what the expectations are for attending meetings or briefings and any other relevant information. Be sure to find out the planning section chief's general expectations. The resource unit leader needs to know the incident-specific aspects of his or her job description. Depending on the status of the incident, you may not get information by traditional means. Be prepared for anything and be able to use it to help employ correct procedures for tracking resources. In some circumstances, a crinkled piece of paper may be your ICS Form 201. The resource unit leader will get information from the map of the incident, the initial organizational chart, which is the personnel assigned to the incident, and the initial resources ordered, which is the equipment being used at the incident thus far. The resource unit leader should be close enough to the rest of the planning section so that he or she can communicate, but should have enough space so that others are not always looking over his or her shoulder. If the resource unit leader is filling the status check-in recorder function, he or she can't be right next to the other personnel because there will be too much traffic. While you want to be in somewhat close proximity, you don't want responders who are checking in to be in the team's workspace. When setting up workspace, the resource unit leader should consider how many persons they are bringing in and how much wall space will be needed for charts, maps, and T-card racks. Should also consider the possibility of expansion of operations, traffic flow, adequate space for displays, and adequate signage for all work locations. As a resource unit leader, you need to set up a filing system for both electronic and paper documentation. Track the chain of actions between the original and the corrected incident action plan. Errors in the incident action plan may include typos or resources that are out of service or didn't arrive. Upon arrival, you might need to order a status check-in recorder or supplies. Be specific when filling out an ICS Form 213. Include the type and kind of resource as well as when you want it to arrive. ICS Form 213 includes the following: a description of what is needed, the quantity, the date and time needed, where it should be delivered, and approval signatures. Remember to always follow the procedures established by the planning section chief. The incident command system is designed so that staffing levels can be scaled up or down depending on the size of the incident and the number of operational periods. Other factors include the number of status check-in recorders assigned and whether the resource unit leader is performing as the demobilization unit leader as well. The number of staff in each unit varies. The unit may consist of one person or many. It is possible on some occasions to have more than one resource unit leader at a time. If the responsibilities are being shared, everyone needs to coordinate ahead of time to ensure that all necessary tasks are accomplished. During a large-scale incident where there may be multiple persons performing one function, unity of command needs to be established. All directions must originate with the incident commander and have a clearly designated path of communication. Incident geography, location, and layout also may affect staffing levels. During an incident, it is important that personnel who work under you clearly understand what is going on. Brief and keep subordinates informed and updated. Give directions to each unit so that they might meet the incident objectives. If the entire team arrives at the same time, you can just hold one large briefing. If they trickle in, you'll still need to make sure that they are caught up to speed individually. Briefing topics may include the type of incident, the jurisdiction and command structure, environmental constraints, financial procedures and constraints, political considerations, consider the security procedures, demobilization constraints and considerations, the incident action plan and operational period accomplishments or trends, procedural changes, and changes that affect the unit, and any other pertinent information that may come in. From time to time, some personnel may ask for a performance evaluation to submit to their home agency. Different agencies have different requirements for performance ratings. If it is a trainee or someone with poor performance, a performance rating is generally completed. If there is a problem, it may be a training issue that you can handle right there. If someone is doing a good job, be sure to praise them, but keep it meaningful. Monitor individual job performance and evaluate and take corrective action as necessary. Use the ICS Form 225 Incident Personnel Performance Rating. Prepare position-specific performance evaluations and discuss the evaluation with the appropriate subordinate. Incidents are going to escalate. There are also maybe times when you don't need so many people and you can release them. Deal with your own resources and identify those who are ready for demobilization. Follow these steps for demobilizing the resource unit. Demobilize as directed by the Planning Section Chief. Brief unit personnel on the procedures for closing out unit operations. Release personnel by submitting an ICS Form 213, which is the general message form, to the demobilization unit leader. Inform unit personnel about scheduled releases and demobilization procedures. Dismantle and return equipment and supplies. Prepare the unit narrative and submit it to the Planning Section Chief. Deliver the required documents to the documentation unit as required by agency documentation standards. Lastly, transfer of position happens a lot if it's an ongoing incident. It is the resource unit leader's responsibility to pass on the necessary information to his or her successor. If the resource unit leader is demobilizing or transitioning to another team, he or she needs to put together a narrative transition document to help the new team. Methods for conveying incident status information include a formal briefing, shadowing, written instructions, or an incident narrative. This will conclude today's training. We hope that you found this topic helpful and useful in preparing to be on the incident management team. We look forward to seeing you next time.